I've seen some big numbers in my life, but one of the biggest that I think I've seen is about $2.7 billion. That is what players want from the NCAA to pay players that didn't get NIL money since the beginning of college football. John, 2.7 billion. It's the estimation. How in the world do you even come up with that estimation? What do you think of trying to back pay players? John, did John freeze up? Caleb, what do you think?
We lost John Adams.
What do you think of there? John's back. I saw him blink. What do you think of back paying players, John?
First of all, I didn't think I froze up. I thought you froze up. I didn't really hear much of what you said, but I think I got the high points. I'll go with the high points and leave out the rambling. Okay. Are you frozen now, Dave?
I'm not frozen.
Okay. Good.
No. Okay, let's get back. $2.7 billion. Is there any way you can repay players that didn't get NIL money?
I don't see how that's possible. I mean, should everybody get the same thing? I mean, how do you determine how much they should get? I mean, if you're third string left guard, how much money do you think you would have made if not for this antitrust violation?
I don't know how you even figure that, Caleb.
Yeah, I don't know either. And so this is, by the way, for those who don't know, this is not Tennessee's lawsuit or the state of Tennessee or Virginia's lawsuit against the NCAA. This is a separate case. It's Landmark House versus NCAA lawsuit. And a lot of this isn't just coming from the NCAA. It's basically a belief that schools themselves owe players a certain amount of money. And the ceiling can go from 20 million to 30 million. And I just think I'm with you. I don't know how I don't know how they can pay this out. I don't know who they pay it out to. I mean, I guess something like the concussion lawsuit years ago, the NFL paid out, but I mean, all the players so many players signed on to that. They just got pocket change at the end, right?
Yeah. Nobody's getting rich off this. I mean,
yeah.
You might be able to buy one tire for your car. What?
Could this lead to a breakup of the NCAA? And I understand it's by colleges, Caleb, but could they eventually say you've done such a bad job representing us, you can go kick rocks?
I mean, the SEC was willing to say that to them 2 years ago, but I actually think that they're working out. I think the revenue sharing plan that they're working out is going to save the NCAA because as the settlement is coming in, this is being reported now by Ross Dellinger at Yahoo, who, by the way, has done the best job reporting on the movements in college football. I just want to send Ross Dellinger a shout out just for that. But basically, because the settlement could be estimated at like 30 million a year per power schools. Let
me interrupt for a second. John, who can afford that? What teams can afford that?
Maybe about 20.
That's what I was thinking, about 20.
Yeah, well, basically there's a revenue sharing model coming out right now that is being worked on involving schools paying players. And basically it's going to work like the NFL. And this is, according to Ross Dellinger, every power school would have $17 to $22 million to just spend on players. And
where's the money coming from, Caleb?
That's what I'm trying to figure out too. I don't know where the money's coming from because it's kind of this report from Yahoo is not making it clear, but they're saying there's a deadline of 40 days to figure this all out, and it's directly tied to the lawsuit against the NCAA. Basically, the settlement with the NCAA is going to require that schools work out a revenue distribution model for the players, which this is so murky because then there has to be you have Title IX, plus you have, and here's the real truth of the matter that no one wants to admit. Title IX is a direct contradiction of the antitrust laws passed. And They were both laws passed by Congress. They were passed by Congress 80 years apart, one in 1890 something, one in 1970 something. And you're seeing the courts have to work out, well, what takes precedent over what?
What you mentioned this, they've got 40 days. Would it be easier to pull this off in 40 days or to build an ark in 40 days?
An ark.
Okay.
Much easier by hand, like on Evan Almighty. This seems to be what, I don't know if they intended it to be. Roy Kramer didn't intend to create a playoff, but he did with the BCS formula. He created a way to seed teams, but he hated a playoff. In this particular case, I don't think they mean to do this, but this could provide the delineation between those that can be in a super conference and those that can't. Naturally, let finances take care of it. I always say the market will bear itself out.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. But we're going to see the shrinkage of college football. I mean, there's just no way around it. There are going to be teams that just can't afford this. But what Caleb brings up a really good point, and what I really wonder about is all other athletes at a university. Is this a gender discrimination? Can a women's basketball player, if football players are making this kind of money, what about women's basketball players? Should they be able to make the same amount of money? I just don't know how this all can work out to please everybody and to please the courts. Maybe you ought to just maybe we ought to just go back in time and get rid of the playoff, get rid of coaches, limit coaches to about $100,000 a year and have a bunch of really big bowl games and let the media decide who should be the national champion.
Good idea. That's original. So what
y'all act like the media.
Well, we could have the AP and the UPI champion.
Yes, the old UPI.
Yeah, United Press International. Yeah, it went out of business, unfortunately, and Associated Press may be headed in the same direction.
Caleb, this could be the beginning of a mega conference. There are going to be some schools that say, we just can't do this. We don't want to be a part of the NCAA anymore. The MTSUs of the world.
I'm still like, how does this work out long term? And this is the truth. It's the phrase I've heard, and John, I want to know, guys, I was 3 when it happened. Y'all both remember it better than I do. So the phrase I heard is that college football is trying to work itself out the way the former Soviet states were trying to figure themselves out after the Berlin Wall fell, which created chaos after chaos, and nobody knew exactly what was going to happen. Is college football in is college football basically the Soviet Union, like right after the Berlin Wall fell? Is that a good analogy?
Nah.
Not really. No, but I appreciate your historical knowledge, Caleb, and thanks for sharing that with us. Maybe if we're heading that direction, then you need a Putin to kind of put everything back together.
Mark Emmert. No, it's Mark Emmert. Huh? He's Putin.
No.
He's driving it all into the ground.
No, it's Nick Saban. He will be the czar of college football at some point. All right.
Probably. The 2.7 billion. Want to get back to that. Guys, how are we even? I don't know how we're coming up with that number, and it sounds like a way to kill college football to me.
Well, according to ESPN, and I want to set this up for you guys, some math expert, some fancy pants, probably Ivy League math expert that figures out numbers in the way that we can't, determined that the NCAA has probably stolen close to $4 billion from athletes in the revenue that they've generated over however long you want to name it. So 2.7 billion would be a compromised settlement, basically, if they agree to that. And because if it goes all the way to court, it could be determined that they actually owe 4 billion. And that's why they're looking to settle. So I don't know how they came up with that number, but I'm sure they did. Figured it out somehow.
Well, it was no Ivy Leaguer doing the math. I can guarantee you that. They're building encampments.
got other more important stuff to do. How many SEC teams would be able to handle the $30 million payment? John Adams Appearance brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center.
45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
How many schools are in trouble if they're asked to pay $30 million from the SEC?
Probably, let's just talk Power 5. Outside the Power 5, forget about it. Then we talk Power 5. What are there, like 60, 65 teams, maybe more now?
67 now.
5,
yeah.
67. Okay. I'd say about a third of those can do it. And then there's some outside possibilities you wouldn't think of right away, like Vanderbilt. You would think, well, there's no way Vanderbilt doesn't spend any money. It just keeps its money and draws interest. What has it done to enhance its athletic program in the last 50 years? Look at that stadium.
Shouldn't there be a requirement too? Like, if you're going to cash out, like, shouldn't the SEC be like, you're violating your terms of being in the SEC because you're cashing out this money and not even trying to invest?
I know, but the SEC needs Vanderbilt for two reasons. It gives other teams a chance at a sure win, prevent them from going winless in the SEC, and it needs to point to somebody. Say, who cares? Who in the world thinks we don't care about academics in this conference? Look at Vanderbilt. So it serves a purpose.
You jokingly are referring to the latter, right? Because I've always thought that was silly. You can't point to one team out of 12, 14, or 16 and say they uphold our academic reputation.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden to carry.
Well, we've got a really smart class. We got Bob, who's super intelligent, and we got 14 other guys that are just don't know what's going on. I mean, you can't. Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. I give them credit for that, but I'm not keeping them in the conference just because they're good academically. Fair.
Well, I tell you what, I want them in the conference now just because they have those cranes behind the stadium. I mean, you know,
explain the cranes. Explain the cranes. Explain the cranes.
The stadium is under construction, and apparently this construction is going to take about, I don't know, 25 years. They're going about it. They're laying a foundation. They want to make sure everything's in place, do it the right way so it will endure. So, you know, I won't live to see it, but maybe you guys will, and see Vanderbilt have a completely revamped stadium, state-of-the-art stadium maybe. But right now, those cranes are merely a sign of the future of where Vanderbilt football is headed.
Which is upwards and onwards, because it looks like a bunch of cranes and some screen hanging out there doing nothing, as they have to actually respond to the number of cranes. I thought you were joking that they have on Vanderbilt's campus. We all saw that. John, that's I didn't know that was actually a thing. As I try to bring you back up on the screen, Caleb, you might need to do it. John, go ahead, sir.
It's just such an odd look. And the funny thing about that stadium is it's as though it's always been under construction, even when it wasn't. I mean, if you remember, you've gone into that stadium, you kind of walk under the stadium to get to the press box elevator. It just looks like there's been some kind of disaster nearby. And then you're kind of walking through the aftermath of it to get to that press box elevator. And I honestly, because everything looks so questionable and sketchy there, I always wonder if that elevator is going to work when I climb aboard.
I'm very afraid every time I step upon that elevator.